Hello, everybody, and welcome to this this month's Mapping It Out, I should say. Weekly. Imagine if it was weekly. It's like, there's so much pressure on the designers. Anyway, welcome to this month's Mapping It Out. Now, the DEIOS team at the Dungeon Fog Studios have been working flat out this month for the release of the alpha. It's now been out for 14 or so days, so we're going to get some interesting insight and feedback from Till on exactly what has been happening with regards to that alpha. We've got some other stuff going to happen in the show as well. We're going to be talking about Spiel Digital. That was the massive convention that ran for 4 days over the past weekend. And then we will be getting a little bit of a glimpse into the future for the alpha for DEIOS, what we can expect next. And if you are a Dungeon Fog user, as I am, we've got some very exciting news about something coming up on that as well. So a full show for you today. As usual, if you do have a question, and I hope that you do, you should feel free to ask whatever questions you so choose regarding DEIOS or Dungeon Fog for that matter. Just write the word question in caps in front of your question so that I can see it, and then I will get Till to answer it one way or another. We have ways of making you talk, yes. So we will try and do that. Anyway, let's get straight into it. So joining me now, of course, is Till from Dungeon Fog. Till, how are you doing?
Hi. I'm in a weird zone between super excited and super exhausted.
I can well imagine. I can
Yeah.
absolutely well imagine. So not only did you have Alpha launch, but then you went into Spiel Digital, and you guys did quite a lot for Spiel Digital. Now, under normal circumstances, just help us, for those that don't know, what is Spiel?
Okay. So usually, Spiel takes place in Germany, in Essen. It is, I believe, the biggest board game convention that Europe has to offer. So you can picture, for those of you who are in the States, you can picture the equivalent of Gen Con here in Europe, with a little bit more focus on board games as well. So that usually there is one hall, it usually, I think there are 6 halls, where one hall is dedicated to RPG games. The rest is all about board games, family games, and whatever you can think of. So usually it's a really big event in Europe. Unfortunately, this year, because of the pandemic going on, it had to be translated into a virtual convention. So yeah, that was taking place from Thursday last week to Sunday. And we decided to do streaming for the first time on ourselves. Because I must say, I have been in the absolute luxury to do a lot of streaming when it comes to mapping it out, but just being a guest. And the last 4 days basically showed me how stressful it is to run a stream on your own. And I must say, Guy, I have so much respect. I always had respect for what you're doing, but now I feel like I do understand how much effort that is and how great you are at it. Starting with the intro words, I failed all my introductions. I felt like I failed all of them. And then keeping track of what the guests are saying, what the chat is saying, the technology, like your director, moderator, entertainer, conversionalist, you're all of that in one person. And it was so. I apologize to Kiora. The last stream on Sunday evening where Kiora was in, I felt like I'm done. I'm dead. I did my best to keep a professional face, but internally I was like,
Well, we've already got some people in chat saying that they hope, this is from Level 39 Nerd, I hope you were able to rest your voice a little yesterday after that much streaming. Absolutely. Did you get a little bit? Yeah, absolutely.
So yesterday was a public holiday in Austria, but that didn't mean that I had a public holiday. I had a lot of meetings with the dev team because this week I will, how do you say, step short a little bit, rest a little bit.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that everyone knows what to do, everyone knows where to go, what's the timeline, what's the plan. So tomorrow I will just fall flat and sleep and load up batteries. But yesterday and today were still work days for me.
Absolutely. What was Spiel like for you guys? Because you did all of the streaming. Did you find any kind of benefit out of that aside from?
So I feel like it would be unfair to judge Spiel for all the mistakes they made because it was their first time. It wasn't quite as we hoped it would be. That was mainly due to probably some, let's say, filtering systems that could have been improved, announcement systems that could have been a little bit more announcy in their way. But for us, because Spiel made me stream, that was a very good decision. We had over the whole weekend, so from Thursday to Sunday, we had about 1,000 people watching and many of them coming back to several streams. So it was, I don't think that I would have been able to process 1,000 people on a booth. So in that regards, I feel it was quite successful. I also had so much fun. I doing the map workshops, having the feedback, like interactively working on maps. I feel like that is going to come back quite soon, that we will do map workshops, because it was really fun. In total, I really hope Spiel is going to take place physically in Essen next year, because I don't know if I would do another digital convention if it stays that way.
Absolutely. Did any of you viewers watching? Did any of you catch any of the streams from the weekend? I know some of you seem to have. And what were your impressions of Spiel? I mean, let's start the conversation. I think that could be quite interesting from that perspective.
I mean, you've been on Spiel as well, right?
Yeah,
You did for Talisman, for Pegasus Spiel. You did the Talisman Adventures game.
Correct.
You had a few. You had some videos that
up.
were produced.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what was your impression?
I'm under no legal obligation to say awful, but that's fine. I think the biggest thing is that we were watching and comparing. I think because Spiel is so seen as a German language event, that anything that wasn't in German was naturally going to get sidelined. But also, I think that there is a time zone difference, and the biggest viewership usually comes from the US. So that was that offset. And then, as you say, there were some filtering issues where it took you some time to find what you were looking for. But yeah, I mean, overall, I was watching some of the content, and I managed to catch some of the other Talisman stuff in German, and I was watching that. I even watched some of your stuff, and I was like, I wish they weren't speaking German, because what they're saying is really interesting. I even popped in at one point and said, hi. Yeah, but yes, so I thought what was going on was great. But anyway, yeah.
I didn't find the time to watch a lot. I watched your Talisman adventure stream. I've watched a little bit of Orkenspalte TV, but in terms of, because I was sitting in front of the camera most of the time, or prepping or uploading videos or trying to do this and that, Spiel was, usually I go from booth to booth and chat with people, but I missed that completely. I know that Thomas and Herbert have been watching a little bit, and we're virtually going around things. So I hope that next week they will tell me more about what they experienced and saw. But in that regards, I was just stuck here in my recording room.
Okay, so I see there Funcracker saying most certainly watched most of the Dungeon Fog streams, but most afterwards, absolutely. And Level 39 Nerds saying, I watched only a couple of the streams. The time zone stuff wasn't made easier with daylight savings time ending here in Europe. No, absolutely. And I suspect today we might be suffering from that same problem.
Yes.
For some of our viewers.
No, also I must apologize for those of you who will watch the VOD of that one. It was an extremely stressful day, and I completely forgot to announce it properly. So I'm sorry. it was a little bit too much on the plate for the last 2 days, and I should have announced it properly, but I missed it. Someone in the community was like, "Is there a stream today?" And I was like, "I forgot about it."
There you go. There you go. All right. So absolutely. All right. So that's behind us now. Lessons have been learned, and good lessons, I think. Alpha's been out for 2 weeks. Let's change gears. Let's talk alpha. And one of the major things about alpha as a technical alpha was getting back responses from users.
Yes.
What has been the response in a bigger picture to the alpha release?
In a bigger picture, okay, so just let's start from our perspective first. So from our perspective, we were quite impressed how slick the distribution, so the download went, because we were, to be honest, we were prepped with something like, oh no, the server's not responding, no one can download, everything's broken, and that wasn't the case. However, I don't have the number yet. I hope I will have it when I release the summary for that one. How many people have downloaded? My instinct would say somewhere between 800 and 1,600 people will have downloaded it. That is my gut feeling from looking at the crash reports and trying to get an understanding of that. But I don't have a dedicated number yet. I don't know how many people really downloaded and how the download curve was. But we were happy with how the distribution worked. We were not so happy with the two major hiccups we had in terms of the installer, which we missed the code signing. So when you run the application, it says the Windows Shield comes up and says, this is an untrusted application. Do you really want to run that? We have all the code signing in place. We didn't meet the right time window to implement it. So this is going to be fixed rather silently somewhere this week, where we'll bring up the new installer that is then code signed. The second one was because we are all developers and we've all been running those tests on our systems, we've missed the fact that you need to have a Visual Studio library installed. And we had a lot of reports about people saying, oh no, I have a DLL error where the application won't run. And luckily, Bodhi was very quick on that. He found the right library and the link where you can install it. We've updated our help desk so people can find it easily and install it. This is also going to be added to this new installer that we will release. So if you haven't downloaded the alpha yet, then you might just not run into those problems, because there will be a new installer that has tackled both of those issues. And then it was very exciting the next day to see the reports coming in. And we've gathered quite a lot of reports, which makes me very happy, because for those of you who know a little bit about development and know a little bit about statistics, is the more data you have, the more thorough your understanding becomes. So if you would only have 12 reports, it would be really hard to understand if this is a common problem or an uncommon problem. Now, if you want to switch to the analysis screen, nope, that's the wrong one. That's the next steps one.
Don't look. Why is that the next steps one? I thought that, no, don't look. I'm going the way. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I had it all lined up. I was just going to be like so slick and just drop this thing in there. I mislabeled it. There we go. That's the right one.
That's the right one.
I'm so
sorry. So if you look at that screen, you will see that we have received almost 5,000 crash reports. Now, a lot of those crash reports are duplicated crash reports, because sometimes crashes so the reporter sometimes reported them as a duplicate, but also sometimes it was the same crash, because you were starting the application, it crashed, you were starting the application, it crashed, you were starting the application, it crashed. So that was generating those 5,000 crash reports. The good thing is that we were able to nail them down to basically, well, we have identified three major sources for crashes. The first one is the web GPU related. So web GPU, for those of you who just have no idea what that means, that is our render engine. And the biggest advantage and the biggest disadvantage with web GPU is that it isn't a finished library. That is still work in progress. And when we started to implement web GPU, we were kind of hoping that as we progress with DEIOS, web GPU progresses as well. So we do know where those crashes are originating from. And that was one of the reasons I had a meeting yesterday. I had a meeting with Nikita about that, and he said, well, he can look into that. He believes that he has already the fixes necessary for that. So this week, he will be investigating how to fix those crashes. The second one is out of memory. So the OOM crashes are related when the application runs out of memory and you're still trying to do something, but you can't because the memory ran full. This is partially connected to web GPU issues because web GPU should not kind of drain your memory. But this is also partially related to systems like PC systems that have a very low memory, like RAM setup. So by fixing the web GPU part, it should potentially reduce the number of OOM reports. But it is also, because it is the second highest report, it is also an indication that we still have memory leaks that we need to close, where especially when it comes to the texture arrays, which means the assets and the water texture or landmass texture, that we can still tweak there and make sure that nothing is kind of consuming memory when not being used.
When you say, sorry, I'm going to jump in there. When you say low memory, what sort of are you sort of talking computers that have got 4 gigabytes of memory or less than that?
I feel like our first recommendation was, I believe, 8 gigabyte. So definitely, if you are lower than 8 gigabyte, you might run sooner into an out of memory crash. I do have seen systems that have 32 gigabytes of RAM and still ran into that issue, which is a good indication that there is still something that we need to fix. Ideally, my goal would be to get somewhere where the minimum requirement would be at 4 gigabyte. But keep in mind, you're using a graphics software, so RAM is going to be necessary. And that is not going to leave us throughout the whole development process and time, is that we will constantly need to look at the memory usage and optimize it, and then revisit and optimize. The next one on the list is the Chromium embedded framework. This is basically where the user interface talks to the renderer. We have a few crashes that are pipeline related, which means that information gets lost somewhere between the Chromium embedded framework and the renderer and creates basically, let's say, a database error where the database tries to read something that was never received. And that is at least identifiable, and now it just needs to be addressed. There are 670 crash reports that were just now collected into the category undefined because they need to be looked at individually. Those can be, this isn't just, this might be, I've seen a list where it's just 1 crash, 2 crashes on that, 3 crashes on another problem, 4 crashes on another problem. And we basically broke them down into that one category where we say, okay, those are crashes that are where the reports are lower than 50 reports on the same crash, but still happened. So we will have to tackle them individually. And we will just iteration over iteration, look if those crashes still show up and then fix them. So this is nothing that we will address instantly, but this is something that we will address over the course of the updates that we are making. And then we have received almost 200 user reports. Those are reports where users sat down, wrote us something, said, I had a crash because of this, I had a crash because of that, or there's a feature not working, or I was trying to delete this, but the problem was that this happened. Now I need to break them. So the thing is, where the crash reports, one question we got was, are we going to answer the crash reports? Should I be waiting for an email that feedbacks to me? And the answer is, for the crash reports, no. This is analytics. We are collecting those, and we're just creating statistics out of that to understand what we do. It's impossible to answer 5,000 crash reports individually. When it comes to the user reports, I read them all manually, and I am creating categories and sort them. But again, I will not be able to answer all 200 user reports. Instead, I will, as soon as we have created those categories and understood them, we will talk about them through Kickstarter updates or articles, or the mapping it out streams, where if I see that something, because we've already identified a few, like when you are creating a report and you're pressing delete in the report text, you might accidentally delete the landmass behind it because we do not block the editor while you're writing a report. So those are things that popped up quite often. If we find similarities, then we will address them. If you want to chat with us, give us feedback, or just talk about things, then come to our Discord. That's the place where if you're looking for feedback, you can contact us there. The report a problem and the crash report are mainly for our backend, for our internal analysis of the software and understanding where we need to fix.
Very interesting, those numbers, Till. Were some of these expected? Did you expect some of these crashes?
Well, we knew that WebGPU is still early in development. We were a little bit surprised by how heavy the crashes were on that. We were expecting WebGPU crashes, but we weren't expecting the impact, how many of them happened. Same goes for the out of memory. I mean, we haven't finished memory optimization, so we were expecting out of memory. And the Chromium embedded framework is, I wouldn't say expected. So we didn't expect to have those bugs or these crash reports there. However, in hindsight, it's not that surprising. We saw that it was rolling in. We were like, oh yeah, okay. Basically, the reaction was, okay, we need to work on that. This isn't working as we expected. So what's happening next? Are we already in the happening next? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so just before we get there, what is your process now with each of those crashes? How do you tackle? Do you prioritize these ones first, those ones first, or
given the fact that my developers just have returned yesterday, or are returning today, and we briefly had the time to look at the values we've got. The next thing we are going to do is, as the development team, we are now going into deep analysis, and we are now trying to figure out where and in what line, what is the, how is it called? The call stack, read the call stack, read the logs, to understand what exactly is causing the problem. and then we will compile this information and start to make a plan on what should be addressed first before we tackle the next problem, because we have a hunch that if we address the web GPU problems first, we might get rid of a lot of the out of memory issues, whereas the Ceph problems are still something that need to be tackled completely separated. And then again, there are all those undefined ones that we still need to filter and look at. How do we bring them into the picture?
Absolutely. Okay. I know it might be a silly question. Should people continue to submit their crash reports and that
Yes,
sort of thing?
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there might be people out there who haven't tested the alpha yet. I feel like from what I've seen in the chat, there has been an interesting transition. In the first days, the main goal was, so that's just my interpretation of what happened, but the main goal was to break it. So a lot of people were just going in and trying their best to break it, and thus creating a lot of reports. Breaking things is fun, but it's only fun for a little bit of time. So what then happened was that a lot of people started to say, okay, now I know where I can break it. How can I work around those things? So we have seen quite beautiful maps that are out there, because I believe people started to understand what are the, let's say, the currents that they need to navigate to start working in the application, which means that you might still run over into an issue that you haven't encountered before. So please, yes, please keep submitting the crash reports. And the second we have our first content patch, or the first system patch out there, they are becoming even more interesting, because then we want to know if we have really addressed the issues or if we just fixed something, but that didn't change anything.
Right. Right. And so when you were talking about the Discord feedback, what has the feedback been like from people just in general? So not just specifically on bug crashes and that sort of thing.
On last Monday, so not this Monday, the Monday before Spiel, I asked the moderators, because it is like, this is something that is a very subjective impression, and I didn't want to be just based on my subjective impression. I asked the moderators what they were thinking, the community on Discord, how was it received, and I feel like it was well received. There was a little bit surprise here and there that this is really a technical alpha and not an almost finished project that you can just like on Steam, like the Steam alphas early access, where everything is almost ready for polishing. And someone called it an old school alpha, which I feel like, yeah, that's it. It is something that we want to use to learn how to make our foundation solid. And in general, people understood that. Like most of the feedback, even the ones that the reports I got in, the messages we got, the community was absolutely amazing, helping each other with the DLL errors, with the help desk links, with how to fix things. It was absolutely fantastic. I feel like what's now on the table, what we now need to do is we now need to work on those bugs, create a more stable experience, and create a more enjoyable experience when it really comes to not breaking the thing and give us data, but now to start working with the thing. And that is what we are basically going to do until the end of the year.
Ah, okay. So have any of the suggestions or the feedback, has that changed anything in terms of what you guys are planning or were thinking?
Well, at least because WebGPU is one of the major issues. It has been brought up in the team, and this is going to be discussed next week when I'm back, is if we want to stick with WebGPU or if we want to revert to a direct Vulkan, for example, library? Like if we want to have the engine directly Vulkan, or do we want to continue working with WebGPU? Because again, if WebGPU is still in its early phase and there are still a lot of problems, it is a bit risky to build on the hopes that it will become better, while we are needing now a good solution. So there might be the decision, there might be a call where we say, okay, let's take out WebGPU and let's integrate direct Vulkan rendering.
Okay. Interesting course sort of change. Okay, if people are still struggling, their best place to go to is Discord.
If people are still struggling, I would say the first thing they should go to is the help desk, which can be found on the Dungeon Fork website. And you just go to the help desk into the early access section there, and there are the most common problems listed with a solution. If they still need help, please come to our Discord. Just join the Discord and ask for help. And our moderators, our community, or our development team will be there and will do their best to assist you.
Lovely. Okay, and the links will be down below in the in the video chat, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right. So, alpha's out. When do we get alpha 0.1? Or alpha 2? Or I don't know. Or are you guys going Xbox? So then it's going to be alpha 53.
Yeah, sure. We're going. No, it's going to be Alpha Vista.
Oh dear goodness! Avoid that one, folks. Skip that one. We wait for.
So 0.1.0, I believe it would be then called. Okay. The first patch will be in November. That's okay. A broad scale because November is already next week. Yes. But if you look at that, if you now could show the slide, I think it's a lot easier to explain.
Not that one. That one.
That one.
Get there eventually.
I tried to collect it as far as we know already where our road is heading. So for this week, we will analyze the crash reports and we will analyze the user reports and we will update the installer. We will also, or better say, Nikita has already started working on the web GPU fixes. And that might take us probably a bit more than a week. So by next week, we should be ready to test it internally. So next week, we will look at the Chromium embedded framework pipelines and see where and how can we optimize there. There is one major thing that Jonas has already finished, which is helping us a lot. The user interface, the U framework, had a major update, and we are now pulling all our user interface and the whole communication, like the pipelines, the framework pipelines from the user interface, we're pulling that into the new version, which will already help us, which will basically already tackle a few of the problems that we've seen reported. Andy will then hand over to Nikita and his team while he is transitioning over to Dungeon Fork, because we want to have, for Christmas, we want to have a Dungeon Fork update out there. And now that we know the crash reports and now that we know like where to tackle what, he can leave that in the very competent hands of Nikita and his team, and Andy can circle back to Dungeon Fork and finish the updates that we had started in March this year, and bring them to the Dungeon Fork web editor. Next week also, I will finally have the time to update our timeline, make sure that everything that we have on the timeline is still in the right sections, and that once we have the timeline finished, we can hand it out to you and you can have a look at that. And next week technically is already November, but I've kind of broken it down because in November, we're aiming for midst of November, but we don't know because we need internal testing first. We want to give out the first patch. And once that is out, we will then go into our second analysis and see how the crash reports have changed. Hopefully they will have drastically. Then we can already start thinking about whether do we need a second patch in December to get rid of, like, if we're still having issues here and there, do we need to fix them first? Or will we then already be able to go back to adding more functionality, like, as I've said before, the text tool, the brush tool, the roads and the rivers tool. So are we then already ready to add more tools to the build? And regarding the Dungeon Fog update, this is by no means already everything we're doing, but this is what we have put on our table.
Well, we're going to talk about those in a little bit, aren't we? That's why I took the slide away. I'm like, no, that's too early. We're not there yet. Yeah, but we will be doing a Dungeon Fog update in December. That's the important thing. Okay, all right. So a lot of stuff going on there. In terms of your timelines, how will we get those updates? Because the current installer doesn't auto update. Is that correct?
Doesn't auto update yet. So the second a new update is available, we will push this notification to your DEIOS dashboard. There will be a big thingy that says new update available, and a little instruction of if you already have maps that you want to port into the new version, how you can do that, because you need to create a save file for the map. And a little instruction. So it's going to be a little bit rocky in terms of how to update to the new version in our first patch, but there's going to be a very thorough, like, step-by-step instruction how you can do this. And then you just download, install, kill the old one, like deinstall the old one, replace it with the new one, and then bring back in your maps that you have hard saved. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. We've got a question here from Damien the DM. What's the first tool planned to be added to Alpha? What's next? Do you know yet?
No, we don't. We have 3 candidates for it. The first candidate is the brush tool, because it is so needed. Like right now, if you really want to color your landmasses, it is, I feel it. I know I want to have a brush and just add color to that. So that is, just from that perspective, that is a really good candidate for that. The second thing, however, is the roads and rivers, because you can't really, I mean, you can fake around rivers, and you can help yourself with assets to create roads, for example, by dropping stones leading from one town to the other to indicate that there is a path. But that's not how the tool was intended to be there. So roads and rivers is also very high on our priority list. And then, because of the feedback we've got from the alpha and people chatting about it quite often, a text tool. I mean, there's no sense to a map tool if you can't label a map. And all 3 of them are like, they're competing for what should we tackle first. So the decision is basically, what is the easiest way to get it done soon? And ideally, but that's just me talking, maybe we can identify 2 of them that are both easy to do, and we can do them in one update, or maybe all 3 of them. I don't know. If you think about the way that Dungeon Fog, the development team works, is we have 14-day sprints. So if next week I'm going to the team and say, look, we have 3 tools and we have 14 days, they will tell me either it's impossible to do 3 tools in 14 days, or they will tell me, well, we can do 2, or I'm taking this one, I'm taking that one. So I can't really say anything about that until I have more feedback from the developers team. But those are the 3 candidates that we're looking at.
Chat is going, sounds like we need a poll.
Yeah. Honestly, if I have the feeling that there are two, like if we're running into the situation where the team says we can do two of them, but the third one has to be delayed for probably around Christmas or after Christmas, then I might go into a poll, because why not? It's your call. Like, what do you want to have implemented next? We're not there yet, however. Right now, we're trying to create our stable foundation, and then we will talk about the tools.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Just while we're on the subject, Funcracker says, can we expect the Mac installer in November or December or 2021 or 2022?
I know that there has been a lot of discussion about when the Mac installer is coming, and I know that we have also done a mistake in terms of, for those of you who pre-order, we didn't think about that because it was so clear to us, because we were streaming and we were talking about the development progress. But there's going to be a little warning that when you want to pre-order, it says Windows only. We're not telling that people right now, and that is stupid. I just missed it. I never thought about it. But we have gotten reports from people who said, well, you say I can pre-order and alpha test, and then it's just Windows. And honestly, that's just stupid. So we're going to change that. Regarding the Mac installer, I don't know yet. I honestly, I have no idea, because again, we need to make sure that our foundation is solid, because creating a Mac installer out of the Windows distribution we have is work, and we will not do the double work on that just because we want to have a Mac version out there, and then we kind of have, and then we still need to fix the foundation stuff, and suddenly we have to fix it in two separate application versions. So until we're not saying we're happy with the foundation, there will be no Mac installer. And same goes for Linux.
Do you think that would be then almost when we get into beta stage?
No, I honestly believe that that once we are past that that stability performance optimization we're currently in, we will be able to do that. It might be that Mac installers will follow whenever we're ready with the new development steps. So there might be update to Windows, and then once we've collected the feedback and fixed it, then we will build a new Mac installer version out of it. But I'm pretty confident that it is going to be part of the transition between Alpha 1 to Alpha 2.
All right, lovely. Okay, and then I'm just looking now. Damien the DM says, so maps will not be automatically carried over for this next update.
No, not for this next update.
Do you think then the subsequent to that they'll be automatically carried over?
The second we have the auto installer, the second we have the auto installer, they can then transition over. Until then, because you always have to delete the old version, install the new version, you need to save your maps first.
Okay, but there is a process that you can go through to save your maps.
Yes,
and
there
then
is.
Bring them in. Okay,
it's not
right.
so you ideally you're not losing the maps, but you need to dedicatedly save them to your local disk, and once you have the new version running, import them back in.
Okay.
And then there will be the point where we say, okay, we now have an auto installer, and that will then make this step obsolete, because you just auto update. All your maps are still in your library. You just update the application.
Perfect. Then again from Damien the DM, can users expect basically a 2-week update cycle?
No. No. Just because the fact is that if you think that we have a 2-week sprint development cycle, that means that after 2 weeks of sprint development, we have ideally something where we say, okay, this is now developed, and then we need to test it. So we're not going to release something untested just because we've finished our sprint. So I would rather say that you should expect something like a 2-month cycle when it comes to updates than a 1-month cycle. Experience will show if we are fast enough to do 1-month cycles. But right now, I'm not experienced enough to say that we can promise a 1-month cycle. So I would err on the safe side and say 2-month cycle is doable. 1-month cycle is already a little bit experimental.
There we go. There we go. All right. I think that wraps up pretty much everything around DEIOS and the alpha. We've got some questions coming through on the new Dungeon Fog update, which is exciting. So let's talk Dungeon Fog for a little bit. Can we expect anything for Halloween? Old Hallows Eve?
Yes. Oh, God. It's already this week. And I have, for those of you who've seen the stream with Tony, the artist alley, he showed some of the stuff he was prepping. I received the email with all the assets. So I'm handing that to Bodhi and Thomas so they can prep that for tomorrow, latest Thursday, when the Halloween assets will be up. It's a pack of, I believe, 25 to 30, rather a good mix between modern and how do you call it?
Gothic. Or...
No. Setting agnostic. Like you could use them wherever you like. Some like a chainsaw is in there that is definitely not going to be fantasy. But I tried to find a good mix with Tony between system agnostic assets and just fun assets for a Halloween horror house.
Is there any way we could get a preview? A little preview?
Let me see what Tony has sent me. Usually Tony sends me something that has also a preview image. And yes, I have.
Aha! All right, so you're going to sort that out. Give us some sort of idea.
Whenever you are ready, we can switch.
Yes, go for it. Absolutely.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, there you go. Here you go.
Ooh, we got some more blood. Everyone likes a bit of blood.
Let me.
Off with his head. Now you're just talking your head. How very thematic.
Yeah, so that is going to be the asset pack. Again, as you see, we have the rather gruel stuff here. We have the doll. We have the wrapped corpse, the chainsaw, but we have the mirrors, the rocking chair. I don't know actually what that is. It looks like branches, a stack of branches. Probably that you can lit up. And
like a bonfire.
Yeah, we have the hanging curtains, the broken glass, the hanging cobwebs and spider webs. So I feel like there's a lot you can do with that if you want to create something like a horror house.
Absolutely.
So this is, I will switch back now.
There you go.
There I go. So this is what you can expect in the next 2 days as our Halloween update pack. Then there is also, sorry to because I almost forgot, Tony is also finishing the asset that we have started creating on the Artist Alley stream. So there is going to be apparently Tony is Tony, so he said, no, I'm going to do all 3 of them. So there's going to be an inactive portal, an active portal, and a broken portal. And the second I have them, I will push them live and make them available.
Fantastic.
And next week, when I'm back, I will start to think about a way how we can reward people with their Spiel badge, because all the previous years we have been handing out Spiel badges to people who are there. Now this year it was a little bit more difficult to track that, at least for me, because I'm not that technically advanced in Twitch. So we will just think about a way of how we can make that happen.
Okay, that's super cool. Get your Spiel badge. That's awesome. Now, there's also, and we've seen this a couple of times because I brought up the wrong slide, but there's also a big update happening. Now, you were talking about, earlier on in the show, you were talking about how you're going to be shuffling around Andy from DEIOS to Dungeon Fog. What's that for? You said there was an update. I've got that slide ready.
Yes. So the thing is that our web editor, initially we said that once we have Alpha 1 out, and again, we were planning for early summer this year, we would then have the time to kind of split the team between people who are continuing to work on the DEIOS application and people who will, and Andy specifically, who will be able to go back to Dungeon Fog and just add new features, fix things, clean up. Because quite frankly, for this year, because of the delayed alpha, we haven't paid much attention to Dungeon Fog, and it is still the tool that people are using most of the time. And there are a lot of things that are piling up when it comes to feature requests, when it comes to bug reports. And we just want to get back on track and get those things fixed and implemented. So Andy will, in November, will start to go back to Dungeon Fog. And we have already, there you go, we have already created a list of things that we want to address. We don't know if we can address all of them in one update, but basically from now on, Andy will dedicate more time to Dungeon Fog, and will hop on, hop off to DEIOS wherever he's needed when it comes to databases or when it comes to pipeline assistance. So what we're going to do, what's definitely going to be in there, because that is almost finished, it just was left lying around when we went to DEIOS prep, are the shapes and the brushes. There's going to be a completely new brush tool and a completely new shapes tool. When it comes to, so it's still brushes, you still have a brush tool, but the way we treat the brush is completely different. It's very much comparable to how the landmasses work. So you don't have this one brush stroke that you can pick, but you have the brush as a shape that you can add to, subtract to, change color, and most importantly, you can sort it above props or below props. So it's becoming a prop. That's the new brush tool. And that one is almost finished. So we just need to reiterate over it, make sure that, I mean, we've learned a lot of things. Maybe we can change something here and there to make it more performant. The shapes tool is very much the same. It's just treated differently. So a brush is something that might have soft edges, whereas a shape is something that you use to create something like a prop per se. And there is one interesting feature that we either keep as an experimental state, or we might find the time to now finish it properly, is where you can free draw, because you can free draw shapes now. But you could then also be able to free draw rooms. So those two are the ones that are almost finished. So we're just going to clean them up, make them ready for deployment. And then there are several things that are on our list for quite some time, which is duplicate rooms, duplicate levels, something that is going to be in there because it's not complicated, it's just, we just haven't had the time yet, is convert campaign maps back into regular maps. Then Andy has already prepared a very nice fix for map errors. So if you're running into a map error, we have a system that can auto fix them automatically. And we know, because of the reports we're getting, that our token system is still a little bit fragile, and we want to address our tokens. That doesn't mean that you will already be able to allow players to move their tokens, because that is a bit more complicated. But there are just, in terms of the way that we're receiving our bug reports, we know that there are bugs related to using tokens, and we just want to get rid of them.
Absolutely, those are so cool. Those updates, I must admit. I mean, as a dedicated Dungeon Fog user, I'm really excited. I do now have a request, which I'm going to put in before anybody else, because, well, I'm here. You're going to have to get Tony to draw you a whole lot of fabric textures, because as you're talking about brushes being able to be drawn over props, I'm suddenly going, hang on a moment. So all those drab bed sheets that you've got, that brown bed from the fantasy section, I would be able to actually draw onto that bed as if it had its own blanket. So I can add cushions to chairs. I know this sounds ridiculous, folks, but there have been many times where I've gone, I don't want the bed to have that bed sheet color because it doesn't match the curtains, which we've now got in the Halloween update. So now I can match the curtains to the bed sheet and I'll be a happy man. Anyway, so that's absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
Okay. When do you think those updates are going to be finished? So he's starting those in November, December. When do you think they're...
So I know that Andy is, because to be honest, I'm not quite certain what kind of problem he has with his shoulder, but he needs to get an operation in December. And he will be, from the 15th of December, he will be out of order. So we definitely want to have it before December 15th, which means that because we have this kind of this thing in the calendar where it says Andy cannot work on stuff because for the next 14 days he's just recuperating. It is a hard deadline we have. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the tasks and we say, okay, what can we do before December 15th, including testing time for us? And everything that's not on that list will Andy then tackle after he has recreated and is back for work. So there will be another one in January or early February, where we'll then bring the rest of the things that we weren't able to finish until then.
There we go. There we go. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of today's Mapping It Out. And Till, I'm sure you are very happy to have the last of your streams for this block over and done with.
I feel like that I'm losing my voice again. Like over the course of this stream, I was like from, oh, I have a voice to,
I did notice a little bit of a crackle at one point. I thought, oh, we're going to lose him in the middle of the show. That'll be fun. But anyway, I think you have a well-earned rest coming up. So there is that. Thank you for being with us and answering all of our questions, Till. It's really, really good to get this kind of honest and open feedback. So thank you.
Yeah. And as always, thank you, community. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, chat, for your feedback, for your crash reports, for your user reports, for being so awesome and help us improve the stuff here. And I'm very much looking forward to see how you will respond to all the things that we're handing out over the course of the next weeks. And as always, if you want to chat with me, I'm trying to be on Discord. I will probably be not as much on Discord this week, but I will be back next week.
Absolutely fantastic. So now, if you are watching, remember there is an update, a text sort of review and summation of today's video that is available to you. If you head on over to the Kickstarter webpage, there's an update that'll come out at some point in the next couple of days.
I will start it tonight. Because again, tomorrow and on Thursday, I'm off. I will not touch a computer. I will start it tonight, but I will probably, if I'm not finishing it tonight, I will hand it over to my team and they will release it once it's finished.
There you go. So there is that. And then in the future, you were also talking about releasing that directly to the DEIOS app itself.
Yes.
So then you'd be able to get that directly as well.
That's going to happen. Like if I hand it over to the team and say, let's push it please to the DEIOS application, you will find it in the DEIOS application in the news section. It will be there.
Fantastic. Okay, well, as Till said, thanks to all of you for watching and for your questions and comments, of course. They are really, really, really useful. So I wish you and yours the very happiest of map making.